Hello everyone and welcome to the Open College podcast series. My name is Oxana and I'm the host of this podcast. On this episode, I invited Sofia Vdovichenko to come and talk to me all about what it's like to qualify as a lawyer in Ireland and in the state of New York. Sofia is currently nearing the end of this process and was able to shed a lot of light on it. This will be a good listen for anyone who may be interested in the legal profession and wants a sneak peek into what to expect on the road ahead. So as always, I started off by asking Sofia a little bit about herself.
So, I'm Sofia. I graduated from my bachelor. I graduated with a bachelor's of civil law and English literature in September 2018. Then I went on and I did my master's degree in that same month, 2018, and I graduated from that just there in September, 6 months ago. I work as a pensions administrator, and then I'm starting my new role as a regulatory compliance manager with Arocco Global Markets.
How did you decide on a career as a solicitor? So I suppose you're just going to dissect and kind of go further into it, because I suppose the whole point of this episode is, I suppose law is one of those things that, from my understanding anyway, there's means and ways to get into it. It's not just one straight road. So I kind of want to get the perspective of someone that's been and done that, or in your case, nearly finished and into the kind of solicitor kind of legal profession, just so that whoever is listening, if they're, doing their leaving cert and they're finishing up, or maybe even a mature student coming back, that they kind of have an idea of what to expect, because from everything that you always tell me, it's not a short road, it's quite long and can be quite stressful and hard, so that people kind of know what they're expecting and what they're getting into, because it's not for the faint-hearted anyway. So how did you decide on a career as a solicitor? Because like we just said, it's a commitment.
It is. It's a big commitment, and it's a really big financial investment. But yeah, so I guess it's something, being a solicitor, an advocate, kind of representing vulnerable people, it's something that I've always kind of been drawn to. And, it's one thing kind of seeing it on TV or whatever, watching it happen then, but it's another when you actually go in and you experience it firsthand. It's definitely not as dramatic as it is on television or movies or whatever, and definitely not as glamorous. But I guess when I was in transition year, I had 3 placements that I had to do, and I had to really think about where I wanted to do those placements. And I decided that I was going to do 2 of my placements in 2 different law firms, one specializing with criminal law, and then the other one specializing in insurance and personal injury claims and all that kind of thing. So with criminal law, that was, I think that was like 2012 or something. It was a while ago, but I do remember it quite well. I was shadowing a solicitor. Yeah, so I was shadowing him for about 2 weeks. We were in and out of the 4 courts. Sorry, not 4 courts. That was the other law firm. We were in and out of the criminal courts of justice in Dublin. It's like right up beside Phoenix Park. And I actually got to meet a lot of barristers as well. And they let me sit in on a court case, because criminal law court cases, they're public, so we were allowed to sit in. So I sat in there for an hour or 2, and I just kind of watched kind of barristers advocate, and then the solicitors do their thing in there as well. And it kind of just drew me, like, it made me kind of more attracted to the type of work, and kind of what a big difference solicitors and barristers make on a daily basis to people who need that kind of representation. Mm-hmm. And so I decided that I was going to go and start studying it in college, but I did want to do it with something else. So I decided to do it with English literature, but we'll get to that later. In terms of the type of law, I suppose when I was younger, it was always something, criminal law stood out to me a good bit. I know I did an internship with personal injury and insurance and all that, but that was too boring for me. I didn't really like any of that. So for a while, I did want to do criminal. But then, I did my master's degree, and my kind of interest changed a little bit, and I started to go more towards commercial and financial. So that's it. That's kind of how my interest started.
Now, I've kind of done a little bit of digging around online, and from what I found out about you is that you're doing your dual qualifying in New York City and here at home. I kind of want to ask about that as well. So why did you choose New York in comparison to I suppose I have other friends and acquaintances, and they've qualified with the UK. So why did you choose New York specifically?
Yeah, well, the reason I chose to dual qualify in the first place is because I really want to internationalize my legal career. I want to qualify as an international lawyer. I don't want to qualify as a local, just Irish lawyer or whatever. So I do want to internationalize. And the reason I chose New York State specifically in comparison to not only any other country, but any other jurisdiction within the states. So why I didn't choose Texas or California. New York as a state underpins some of the world's main commercial transactions. It is probably the most important city for financial transactions. And because I am going into commercial law, that is probably one of the main reasons I chose New York State. It's also a choice of law state for most contracts. So a legal contract would have two jurisdictions in terms of choice of law, the choice of law clause within the contract. It's either London or New York. So those two jurisdictions are probably, if you're looking to dual qualify, those two jurisdictions are probably one of the most important to consider, especially if you're going into commercial law, because there's a huge demand for when you're in the league in commercial law to actually know one or the other when you're dealing with clients. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why I chose New York. And then the reason I chose the States over, like, for instance, qualifying in Australia or the UK is, like I already said, New York is probably the most important for financial transactions, commercial transactions. For Irish lawyers, it's not that difficult to qualify in the UK. If you qualify here in Ireland, all you have to do is sit one exam, which is, I think it's property law in the UK, and then you will be admitted. Because Ireland and England have a thing called the CTA, which is an agreement between each other, which kind of takes down a lot of barriers for certain professions. I know law is one of them. I don't know any other professions, but law is one of them in terms of, like, for instance, if a UK person wants to come and qualify as a solicitor here in Ireland, they only have to do one exam, which is property. And then if I qualify here and I want to go and dual qualify in the UK, all I have to do is pass like one exam, which is property. So it's not that difficult. And if I do decide that I want to try qualify, like if I want to live in the UK for some reason or whatever in the future, then it's not that complicated for me to do that, provided that I qualify here first. So it's not that difficult. But yeah, that's kind of why I want to qualify in New York. It's a really beneficial qualification to have in comparison to just, having a qualification with Ireland and UK, because there are a lot of US companies that, like, that big law firms in Ireland or the UK would be dealing with. So me having this qualification, I don't necessarily have to live in New York to use it. I can use it when I'm working here with US clients on a transaction that requires knowledge of New York law. Then it would make sense for them to have me work on it than, I don't know, working with an outside or liaising with an outside counsel in the US or whatever, So, and clients themselves might be more comfortable in dealing with someone that would be quite familiar with New York law, rather than someone who is just qualified in the UK or whatever. So there are a lot of advantages to having a US qualification rather than just Ireland or England or both, considering the amount of US clients that you would be dealing with, particularly US transactions in commercial and financial law. So, yeah.
Okay. And does that mean that you're limited now to only practice in New York and Ireland?
Yeah, see, the way law works is each jurisdiction is its own jurisdiction. So even in the US, when I qualify in New York, I won't just be able to go and practice in other states in America because it's a federation. Each state has its own jurisdiction, whereas Ireland, we have different counties, but if you're a solicitor in Dublin, you can be a solicitor in Cork, you don't have to do a separate exam. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit more complicated when you enter a federation, but I know I'm not going to start going into the specifics, but if you get certain scores in your exams, you can potentially go and be admitted in a different state other than Texas and California. They're completely out of the uniform bar examination, which is essentially an exam that if you score high enough, you will potentially be admitted in another state, provided that they are signed up to the UBE, which is a uniform bar exam. I know Texas and California at the moment aren't signed up to it. So if I want to go and qualify, if I want to go and work as an attorney in California, I have to do their exam all over again, their whole admissions process.
Okay, so yeah, that sounds quite a lot, to be honest. Let's loop back a bit though. So when it comes to becoming a solicitor, we'll mainly focus on Ireland. So I suppose when you're qualifying as a solicitor here, there's also the other route of becoming a barrister. So can you explain to us then what the difference is with the two?
A barrister and a solicitor are both lawyers. So there's no difference in terms of the quality, in terms of the skills that they need to have. And the only difference, like for instance, a barrister and a solicitor are separated only in the UK and Ireland. Everywhere else, they're just the one lawyer. In America, an attorney and counsellor at law is a barrister and a solicitor. For some reason here in Ireland and England, I don't know what the history is in terms of separating the two, but the main difference is that a barrister is essentially an advocate in the court and he is self-employed. So he gets most of his clients sent in through solicitors. A solicitor can't actually advocate in court. They would be, more kind of dealing with clients face to face, whereas a barrister he gets the paperwork, he meets a client or whatever, and then he actually goes and advocates in the courtroom. The solicitor sits in there as well, but they're not actually authorized to advocate in court. I don't know why they make the system so complicated, and I don't know why they separate a lawyer into two like that, but that's the thing. A solicitor is not self-employed and a barrister is.
Oh, okay. I was always under the impression that solicitor would do kind of like the paperwork side of it, whereas the barrister does the arguments.
Yeah, essentially, the barrister would have a good bit of paperwork, and they would be quite academic in terms of their research and stuff, just so they know what they're actually arguing and whatnot. The solicitor would send them most of the work, so they would just use their advocacy skills. But the actual qualification process is slightly different. So when I was saying earlier, to enter the Law Society for professional training, it's about 2.5 years. So once you do the entrance exams, which is 8 exams, once you pass them, you've passed the entrance exams and you are eligible to go and begin your professional training. But you can't start your training until you find a company to give you a training contract. And we'll get to that later, that you have to get a training contract and then you can start your Black Hall training. A barrister, on the other hand, he goes in to do his King's Inns. There are 6 exams. He has to sit them all in the one go. Then he continues his training, it's about 2 years. So yeah, it's about 2 years, and then he gets called to the Bar of Ireland.
Okay, right. So as long as we're on the topic then, let's start from the very start of the whole process of becoming a solicitor in Ireland. Let's go from the Leaving Cert. You do your Leaving Cert, you get your whatever amount of points you need. What's the most straightforward route to get to becoming a fully qualified solicitor?
Okay, so here you don't actually need a legal degree to go and do your legal exams. Whereas, for instance, in America, when you're qualifying, you actually need to have a law degree. So here and the UK, you don't. You just need a degree. It can be in any discipline.
Okay, so you could be just someone who's really, really interested in the law. Like if anybody has actually watched Suits, where your man just shows up and does the exams and away you go.
Yeah, so in the US, it's slightly different though, but you need to have a legal degree and then they have to go and do their Juris Doctorate. That's different. But if we focus on Ireland, you need to have a degree. It doesn't matter what discipline it's in. You can be coming in from a nursing degree or coming in from an accounting degree, and then you decide, I want to be a lawyer. So you go and you do your 8 FE1 exams, then you pass them all. You go, provided that you've secured a training contract with some company that will take you on for 2 years. And then you go and enter Black Hall and do your additional exams while you train for 2.5 years. So altogether, from the moment you start college to when you finally get put on the role of solicitors, it's about an 8-year process.
Oh wow, that's a very long time. That's nearly as long as a doctor takes to qualify. I think a doctor takes like 11 years or something here in Ireland.
Yeah, and it costs nearly the same.
I'd say it is expensive, especially the exam costs. So what happens then when you have your training contract, when you're doing after you completed your FE1 successfully? Is it just that you like you were saying before, you shadow another solicitor, you work on cases with him? Do you actually get to work on a case like on your own and they just oversee your work, or how is that done?
Okay, yeah. So when you secure a training contract, you have like the first thing you do is you apply when the applications open, which is between September and December each year. That's when various companies open and you start to submit all your applications. Then if you're successful in getting an interview and then you're successful in actually being offered a contract with the company, that will start maybe the year after or 2 years after, depending on what stage you're at. Are you still in college? Are you still in the middle of your FE1s? Or are you completely finished? If you're completely finished, you can start earlier. Yeah, so once you start, you go and do your Black Hall, which is one entire year. So you go in and you do that, and there are various subjects that you have to do for that. Then
so you don't actually have to finish out these 2 years. It's just you need to be working somewhere to do your Black Halls.
Yeah, you're getting a contract with a company, and in the first year of your contract, you're doing just your professional exams, which are called the PPC.
Oh, okay. I thought you would actually be working with them. Okay, no, never mind.
You're getting paid by them. They're paying you your salary, but you're not actually in the company because they're sending you off to do your professional training. Then after a year that you've done all the exams and you've passed them all, you're in the office for the last year. And then in the last year, it could even be longer. It's about 2.5 years. Some companies drag it out to 3 years, but it's very rarely that they do. But you do 4 seats and you can do that in a year. So one seat would take about 3 months, and you would do like your seat in litigation, then you do a seat in conveyance. And a seat essentially means you do that entire area. So you go into that department and you work there for 3 months on whatever case that you're working on, involved in whatever transaction or deal or whatever. One is litigation. Litigation is required, you have to do it. Conveyance is required, you have to do it. And then you can choose your last 2. So you can choose to do it in environmental law, aircraft financing, whatever. Like you can choose whatever you want to do it in. But the first 2 are mandatory: litigation and conveyance. It makes sense that they're mandatory. You have to learn how to litigate, and you have to learn conveyancing, which is essentially commercial property. So okay. Yeah, so that's kind of how it works. I haven't done it yet. So but from speaking to people about it, they described it like that, and they said that yeah, you do your seats and stuff, and
you're nearly there then. Okay. And then when it comes to the other side of being a barrister, would that be a similar process or more straightforward?
It wouldn't be similar at all. So they do their 6 exams, and then they have to pass all of them. And then once they pass all of them, they begin their training, which is essentially like, it's kind of like college again. They have various projects they have to work on. It's mainly research based. They probably, I don't know exactly, but I think they most likely have to do a lot of mooting, which is essentially fake court proceedings. Okay. They have to practice, to obviously kind of hone in on their advocacy skill, because that's essentially what they have to do as barristers. Yeah, I'm assuming that's how it is. But it's a slightly shorter process than becoming a solicitor. So it wouldn't take as long for them to qualify.
And that's probably because with the FE1s, you can kind of take them a few at a time, isn't it? Whereas what you're saying with the barrister, it has to be all at once. So that probably shortens the process.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're qualifying as a barrister, you actually can't work anywhere because your entire time will be dedicated to that. And then when you're actually doing your FE1s, you can work because you can kind of take them one at a time. And you kind of don't have a choice. Some people can't just not work, So That's the thing. But when you enter Blackhall, you'll have a training contract secured. So you'll be doing Blackhall without having to worry about working the next day or doing work in the entire day and then studying in the evening, because you're already employed under whatever company gave you that contract. So you're getting your salary in. So it's kind of good in that way.
And is there other routes that people could kind of consider, I suppose? Because, I don't know, say, for example, you do your leaving cert, you don't get your points, but you also don't want to repeat. Is there kind of like another way to get in the door with this?
Yeah, your arts degree. So if you don't get enough points, I know arts isn't that much. I think it's like 350 points. If you get under that, I don't think you can get into many courses. But yeah, if you get 350 arts, this was like 6 years ago for me, so I don't know, the points definitely changed. But if you don't get enough points, you go into arts and you pick law and whatever other subject. I think you pick 3. Law, I did business, I did English, and then whichever 2 are your strongest, you carry on with them as your double major. So you will transfer from arts into law with business or law with accounting, whatever you've chosen. So that is the best way to go about it if you don't get enough points, because I know I didn't get enough points to go straight into law. I had to go and do it through arts. Because law, when I was applying, law was in the 500s for most colleges. So I only got like 450 or something, so I didn't get into 500s. So I had to go and do it through arts. So law is pretty high in points, and it seems to be getting quite higher as well. But yeah, if you don't get it, no biggie. Go in, obviously try and get 350 points, more than that, preferably, obviously. But if you don't get your 500 whatever points, but you get like 430, or you get like me 450, go in through arts and pick law with whatever other subjects. That way, do really well in it. If you do well in it, you'll be able to carry on with it as an actual degree in law, you know.
There's also the upside, I suppose, that because it's an arts degree, if you don't like it, you don't have to carry on with it and you still have your degree. Whereas if you go, I mean, as in you still have your degree, you can just pick something else and continue on with that. Whereas if you went solely for law and you don't like it, well, either you drop out or you just kind of carry on, but you're a bit miserable doing something you don't like.
Exactly. And like, people think like 4 years in college is a long time. It really isn't. It flies in. If you don't like law and you're still doing it, don't drop out, just finish it, because with a law degree, you can go and do so much. You can go into financial services, and then within financial services, there are so many areas you can go into. You can go into anything with a law degree. You can go into teaching. You can go into teaching in terms of actually lecturing. So you'll obviously have to go and do a PhD, but
that's not even the case all the time. I know a lot of colleges take you on if you have a master's. There you go.
Yeah.
So you could even get lucky that way.
Yeah, I just know if you want to go and become a professor or lecturer, you have to go and do a PhD. I don't know if that's what I was told in Maynooth when I was
like in the big universities, it's probably the case because their standards are so high. But obviously, not all colleges have such high standards. Some of them you could just be, you have your master's in your level 9. You're still teaching, but you're not like a main professor in front of the class lecturing, doing all these research projects or whatever it might be.
Well, yeah, there's loads of different routes. And then when you actually do have your law degree and you are looking to build legal experience, obviously there are like things you can go into, like legal executive, legal secretary, which are your basic ones. But considering how competitive the legal market is, they don't tell you this in college. You have to just kind of figure it out yourself, and you have to build your own resilience when you actually enter it, because you will be disheartened a lot of the way, but you just have to keep kind of going. In terms of building experience, that is like one thing that I would suggest to anyone that is like in college, because that is something I didn't do as early as I should have started doing it, but it's okay because I'm doing it now. But what you need to do is you need to build on your legal experience as early as possible. Preferably during college. Start applying for internships, intern in as many places as you can. Then when you're out of college, even if you're in college and you can find a company that will give you part-time work, great. But if you can't, after college, go in and do your paralegal experience, go in and do your legal executive experience, go in and do your any sort of legal compliance, in-house, company secretary. They're all legal work experiences, and they're all extremely valuable to have when you're applying for companies. So somebody that's applying straight out of college that might not have anything, and then you're applying, but you have experience, you'll obviously stand out as a candidate. It shows you're committed to legal work experience, and somebody applying that is still working as a waitress or something, you know. So you just kind of have to think and start acting on that kind of thing as soon as possible. Don't let it drag out. And then, sorry, there's another thing that they don't tell you in college. It's kind of things that you just kind of have to find out. But if you are looking to qualify in the likes of the US, it's really, really important that you need to have a law degree to do that. So if you qualify here, if you go on to do a business degree or something, and then you decide you want to become a lawyer, you won't be able to do that in the US because you didn't have a law degree. Here you can, but over there you can't. So it's really important, even if you're not sure, but you think you will qualify as a solicitor, just do that law degree, because once you have a degree in whatever, you're stuck in Ireland or the UK. You can't go abroad. And it is pretty disheartening, because I know one person in that situation who didn't do a law degree, and he does want to qualify in the US, but he can't unless he goes back and does like his law degree, and that's another 4 years, you know. So it is really
could he not do an LLB? That's a conversion course, I think, isn't it? So technically that would still be a degree.
No, they're very strict with their requirements, and he's already looked into all of that. You have to have a certain amount of classroom hours that you have done. You need to have a certain amount of credits that you need to have done. Any of those conversion thingies, they don't work, and they clearly stated in Rule 520 of the Court of Appeals that actually states the rules required, the requirements that need to be satisfied to enter the admission process to be admitted to be given your license as an attorney. So it's things like this that they don't tell you in college, which I feel like you need to know this before you decide what you want to do. If you're lucky enough to have went on with a law degree and got it, great. If you don't have one, I mean, if you're happy with staying here, that's fine. But, you know, obviously, I know a lot of people that have gotten their degree here, and they've all went off to the US a lot. And the market's huge over there, and it's getting even bigger. So it is becoming a more attractive place to qualify. So it is really important for people to know that you need to have a law degree to qualify in the US. You don't need to have one here.
Is there any other kind of tidbits that you can share that people might not know, but they should know?
Yeah, so you will be surrounded by people who will have their training contracts or whatever. You might not have one just yet, but it's not the end of the world. The main thing to know is that a lawyer qualifies on average at 29 to 30 years old. You know, I'm 24 now. I'm probably not going to qualify until I'm 29 or something, 28. So it's a long process. And people just don't realize. People just feel like they have to kind of keep rushing to get things out of the way. But realistically, there's no need to, because you won't qualify until you're 29 or 30 with everything that's involved. So that is kind of the average age. It's not really a big thing, but it's just something to be aware of. If you are feeling like you're under societal pressure to kind of start your training, qualify,
get your stuff together. I think that kind of comes from the whole social media thing where everybody is just perfect and peachy and rosy, and everybody wants you or shows the world what they want you to see, but in the background, so don't compare, just kind of keep on going, and you'll get there when you get there.
You'll have the odd few who qualify at a ridiculously young age, but it's very rare, and it might happen to them if they've secured a training contract when they're in their second year of college, get all their FE1s done in the one go and go straight into trading. Whereas other people can't do that. They have to work full time, and you can't get your FE1s done quick when you work full time because so much study is required. So it might take longer for someone else, but that's just a societal thing. You just kind of have to shut that out and realize that it's your own kind of journey. And just to know that, it's normal to qualify at 29 or 30, even 31. I know one lad who is 31, and he's going to qualify, I think, within the next 2 years. So it's pretty normal to be that age. So that's another thing I'd say, because some people have this thing in their head where they just have to get things done really quick. I know I'm like that, but I kind of think.
But that's also people who have been doing that from leaving cert on from a young age. There's also people, I suppose, out there who decide in their 30s, I want to change careers and do this. So just keep on going and you'll get there.
Yeah, I went to college with so many people, mature students who were like in their 40s, and they were only getting their law degree just because they've had, I know one girl that I went to college with, she was a mature student. She had children very young in her life, and she basically just kind of cared for them their entire life. And now they're like, 18, 19, whatever, entering college themselves. And she kind of thought to herself, well, now I have time to go and do what I want to do, so it is pretty normal to even do that. There was a fair few mature students in my undergrad and my master's degree. So, you can qualify at any age.
Yeah, they do say that apparently people change careers, I want to say 5 times in their life. Now, that might be a bit much, but to be honest, it kind of sounds about right. So being a mature student in college, it is what it is.
Yeah. And then obviously as well, another thing to keep in mind is that it's a really, really, it's a financial and time consuming commitment that you have to put into this. Like a black hole itself costs 16,000. If you get a training contract, they'll pay for that. If you get it with a big company, if you go for a small company, if you want to practice criminal or insurance, that kind of area of law, it's mainly smaller companies that would practice those areas. The bigger ones practice more like big transactions and deals. But if you're going for a smaller company, you will have to pay black hall yourself. So there would be saving involved. 16,000, it's a lot of money. And then FE1s on top of that, mine came out to be 1,500 for FE1s alone. That's 17,500. And then obviously college, I don't know if you get Susie to help you or if you're paying that yourself, but the entire legal education comes out well over 20,000 here in Ireland. So it is very expensive. It's a long process. It's 8 years. And the one thing I would say is not to jump into a training contract straight away, just because once you enter it, you're stuck. You have to do your 2 years of training, and then if they retain you and keep you on as a qualified solicitor, you're stuck, So what I would suggest is to go away for a year and take a break and do something. Go away, I don't know, stay here and do something, or go abroad and kind of just enjoy yourself for at least a year away from that kind of thing, and then come back and commit yourself to that kind of thing. And mainly everyone I know who is going into their training contracts like me and whatnot, they've all done that, or they're all doing that. I know I'm going to Australia next year just to kind of have that year and to myself and enjoy my youth while I have it. And then when I come back, I'll commit myself.
Yeah, it just sounds like such a long process. But it's one of those things that if people are into it, they're just going to do it and they'll get there no matter what it is. The other question I have is, I suppose, because it's such a commitment and it's one of those jobs that I think you have to have kind of like a certain personality for.
Yeah.
Like, what would you think would be some of the traits that someone should have going into this? Because I don't think you can be a softie now. You can't be standing in front of a judge arguing your case and having a little cry because the other person, So
I would say one thing that a lot of lawyers are lacking, I feel, is compassion. So it is okay to be soft. It is okay to be compassionate, but you have to have certain character traits for this kind of profession. And there are 3 C's that you have to have. One of them is competence, confidence, and your credentials. Okay, so they're your main 3 that you need to have. You need to be extremely confident, never doubt yourself. You are dealing with people at the end of the day, and it's one thing to be good at your job or whatever, but you need to make sure your clients don't hate the process. So, it depends on what area you're going into as well. If you're going into criminal law, you have to have some sort of compassion, I believe. If you're going into business where it's like deals and transactions, maybe not so much. I still feel like you need a little bit of compassion. You need to show your feelings, and you will end up doing that anyway, because if you're not happy about something or whatever, you're going to end up showing how you feel about that kind of thing. And that's what I mean about confidence as well. You need to be really confident in your decisions. You can't second guess yourself. You need to be very competent as well. That's it. That's just the four C's.
And that was Sofia Vdovichenko on the road to becoming a lawyer. A lot of little tidbits and insights for those who possibly are planning on pursuing a career in law. As always, guys, hit subscribe if you want to listen to more episodes with us. You can always find us on all our social media accounts like Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, or just by searching The Open College. And of course, there's our website, which is theopencollege.com. That's all for now, you guys. Goodbye for now.